This episode of the Managing Madrid Podcast is brought to you by the Managing Madrid Podcast live in Toronto. We're playing pickup footy on December 6th, raising money for sick kids in Toronto, giving away prizes, and chatting Real Madrid with passionate Madridistas. If you want to come kick it with us, play some footy, all for a good cause, then come out. If you're anywhere near Toronto, Hamilton, Niagara, if you're in Ottawa, Montreal, heck, Moncton, Halifax, Vancouver, Buffalo, Detroit, Cleveland, New York, Philly, drive in, fly in, do whatever you have to do. We look forward to seeing your skills and helping sick kids in Toronto. If you want to RSVP to the event, the link is in the show notes. We'd love to see you there. I'll be there. That's Kiyan Sobhani, by the way. Mehdi Hassan will be there. We got Peña Madridista Toronto. We got TAC Academy. And much more, many more. Really fun night in the works. December 6th. Come out if you're in Toronto.
Nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First great podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
Hello and welcome to the Managing Madrid Podcast. It is November 5th. We are here for tonight's therapy session. It is our 17th therapy session of the season. Real Madrid get cooked again. They get blown away at home. This is one of the worst Real Madrid teams I've seen in a long time. It has been hilariously bad. Comically, the defense has been so bad, it's just comical to see how Real Madrid will break down every single sequence. Will it be because the front two aren't pressing? Will it be because we're trying to press, but we have no press? Will it be because we're holding a high line with no offside trap? Will it be because no one is tracking anyone in the box? Will it be because all it takes to split our defense is one pass, one dribble, two passes between the lines to get a breakaway after breakaway after breakaway after breakaway? God bless you, Andre Lunin. I apologize on behalf of the entire Real Madrid universe to you and Thibaut Courtois for having the most difficult job a goalkeeper can have, possibly in the history of football. We're going to talk a little about big picture stuff. This game was terrible. We'll also talk about that and wherever else this conversation goes. Siddharth is here with me, Kiyan Sobhani, to break this all down. Welcome, Sid. How you doing?
I'm okay. I figured after 9 days it would look a little bit better. I wasn't expecting us to play like 2017 Real Madrid with Marcelo and Modric and Cruz, but I was expecting something to change. And I feel bad just for Carlo. I feel like time's running out for him. He came out and I did a segment in between the Clásico and this game, just looking at what we could change to come back, press high and make all those mistakes you described where you press high without actually pressing high, which means everyone presses, which means you hold an offside trap, which means you practice it precisely on the training ground. So it's not about just individuals running, but it's like your team's on a string. None of that happened. The fact that he even tried to attempt it again felt arrogant to me. This guy's never achieved it his whole career. And it's like, oh, you get 10 days, magically you're going to have this team pressing. Like you got to spend a whole summer studying this stuff if you want to pull it out. And it feels like the writing's on the wall. The coach isn't making the most of the players. Even the squad is thin and is flawed, but they should be playing much better than this. Simple as that.
Look, I have a massive list of things that are wrong with this team, and it has nothing to do with this game. This game just pretty much confirmed a lot of the things we already know. Look, we had how many days off between the Clásico and this game due to the Valencia postponement. All these words in the press conferences about we know what to improve, we know the defense has to improve, all this stuff. I said this a couple of weeks ago. I said this after the Dortmund game and before the Dortmund game. These words mean nothing to us. These words mean nothing to us. We have seen not a single tangible improvement this season in anything. There has not been a single trend in the correct direction. Not one single thing I can look at this season and be like, oh, yeah, that's working. That looks good. We should build on that. There's been nothing. There's been individual performances that have been good here and there. And sometimes those individual performances lead us to winning games and putting band-aids on the situation. Bear with me, Sid, as I just go through everything that's going on in my brain right now without any real coherence or anything that's chronological or listed in any specific form. Last season, in those 2 games against Leipzig, we got destroyed. Lunin saved us in the first leg, plus Ibrahim solo individual golazo, plus Tchouameni, a masterful center back performance. That seems like an eternity ago. Tchouameni played well. Yeah, that was a very long time ago. Tchouameni was terrible again today, but he wasn't the only one. Next round against Manchester City, first leg much better. Second leg was pretty heroic. And then Dortmund, it was a lot of the same thing. Bayern, we left it late off the bench with Joselu. The point I'm making is this. It's been a lot of band-aids over cracks that this team has had. And this season, I think, it's gotten to a point where we're looking at it and be like, finally, after what, 3 years, 4 years, we're starting to see that it's just not sustainable to rely on these individual heroics. It's not sustainable for Jude Bellingham to both keep playing right back and a striker. It's not sustainable to be in no man's land on defense. You're neither pressing nor in a compact block. I completely agree with you on the pressing thing. It makes no sense that we haven't come to this realization yet. Matt and I did an entire podcast about Ancelotti's mistakes and how to fix them. You and Mazen did an entire podcast about the same issue. I think it's safe to say Carlo didn't listen to any of those podcasts. That's pretty clear. But 2 years ago, at least we had that realization where Carlo was like, oh yeah, the press is not working, low block, counterattack. I'm surprised he hasn't found that solution yet. I also think this call, because I know there was some criticism of like, why are you guys talking about low block and why don't you guys have higher standards for Real Madrid to play this way? We're talking about realistic solutions. Carlo Ancelotti has never implemented a successful high press in his life. So we're not going to come here and say we need to press more when that's not a viable solution. So the team has no identity. And then there's a bunch of other problems. And I'm going to stop there because I know you want to interject and I'll save it for later. But, the defense, and we can talk a lot about the offense and the confusion of the positioning. No target in the box. How many times did we get to the byline successfully and cut it back to no one attacking those balls? There's one thing that's the offense that's still confusing. But the defense is getting cooked. And in years past, if that would happen, like under Zidane, for example, and I know we had our issues with Zidane, but what Zidane would do in that situation, it'd be like, okay, offense isn't working, defense isn't working. What we're going to do for now is we're going to stay compact on defense and win games 1-0. And so we just don't have an identity on defense or offense right now. And it's just a really bad place to be in. And I just don't see this being solved. And this will lead to a lot of big picture discussion about Carlo and if there's a way to salvage this season or not. But those are just some of the scattered thoughts I have right now. There is no identity on defense. There is no identity on offense. There is no direction. There is plenty of confusion. Incredible amount of defensive mistakes individually and collectively. And, it's only 3-1 because of Lunin and not more.
For what it's worth, I feel like, there's so many things to touch on, but let's just start with the fundamental tactical problems this season. And I know maybe some repetition from our big picture episodes, but it's important to remember, he's never implemented a press his whole career. But it's also worth remembering we lost some of our identity his first season when he came in after Zidane. Like, Ohm was here. If Ohm saw the number of people trying to blame the players this season, he is rolling in his grave right now, both watching this tactical disaster and watching all you shameful people trying to blame Mbappe for the defense. The tactics are bad. And was one of the people who I felt like he was almost 2 on it when Carlo came back. And I feel like I'm the only one trying to talk about this now, but we were worse tactically his first season back. For a lot of that season, we were kind of off until this stage of last season as well. We were completely off. The season in between, we were bad after the World Cup. The reality is we're never that balanced under him because he delegates so much to the players. And when the season's building momentum, he kind of shores the defense up. So with Cruz, but the control was worse his first season back than it was under Zidane's last season. We just had Vinicius unleashed, and he's willing to do some things and play faster offensively than Zidane. He's willing to honestly trade off defense more than Zidane. That's the main thing he brings to the table. But yeah, he's never coached a press. I'm like so confused when people, like all these fans asking for a press, like where did you get that word in your vocabulary? Teams didn't press until like Barcelona came onto the scene. Go look at every big team that pressed. It's with coaches that have been educated. Pep had an education under Cruyff, Arteta under Pep. Jurgen Klopp comes from that gegenpressing German school. The Italian school doesn't have as many pressing coaches. We're only starting to see De Zerbi and Thiago Motta at Juve. They're just cropping up. Carlo comes from a different...
And it's not a Real Madrid thing. It's not even just like not an Italian thing historically, but it's not a Real Madrid thing. Actually, I would even argue like some of those Italian teams from like early 2000s, like Juventus under Lippi, were far better pressing than I've probably ever seen Real Madrid do in their history. I'm not exaggerating.
Right. So you have the culture, the club culture, and Carlo is like a lot like the club culture. Just let the players figure it out. But I don't know why people expect a good press. The thing with him, though, I think that's important to remember here is like it's easy to bend in the press when Cruz and Modric are winning you games. When you go look at your midfield and you see Camavinga, who's like, even to this day, when I see him jump to press someone, I'm just like, holy shit, dude. How the hell? Like, it's like you decide to press him and he could be 10 yards away. And next thing you know, you're all over him. And so he's watching these guys in training and he's like, there's no way I can't play fast with them. And I get it. But that's also that's the opposite of what's won us games for a decade. For 10 years, we won games because we can play fast, but we finally got a guy who slows it down. I don't think playing fast is hard for this team. It's just if that's the only way you know how to play, teams are going to absorb your pressure, counterattacks won't be great, and they're going to hit you on the transition, which is what's happening. I think, the funny thing is even if he listened to these podcasts, even if he listened to this whole podcast for 10 years, there's nowhere in this show where we can actually teach him how to press, dude. That's really hard because, Kiyan, I'm sure you noticed, but like, don't you see how much of pressing is actually like the players having an unconscious connection between each other? Like so much of pressing is when one guy goes up, it's the rest of the team knowing to follow without saying a word. That's not like, you don't just go and say, hey, run hard, dude. That's not how you coach a press. A press is like harder to coach or as hard to coach as high level buildup. Like it requires sophistication. You kind of have to understand psychology well. It's like a complex skill. And yeah, I just don't get why he's trying to do it. I'm just like it's just so silly to me that he would run it back. I guess it feels obvious to us, but I guess a quick question. Do you think he tries again against Osasuna if he's around?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I just know that this is what we're watching. It's pretty much this is what we're watching, and it's take your pick. Like AC Milan had like 5 different ways to cook us on defense today. One was that our first initial line of pressing, which is not an actual line of pressing. It's 2 forwards kind of roaming around behind the ball, doing nothing, neither pressing nor staying compact. So very permeable. That's the first line of defense. The second one is that Modric was awful tonight. And I don't want to single him out because you could single out like probably 7 players tonight that were just horrible. Modric was one of them. But over time, he's just lost the explosiveness and the legs. It's so easy to dribble past him. It's so easy to pass behind him between the lines. and this has been like kind of gradually over the last 2 years, I would say. I brought up this example to Matt too. Like, 2 years ago, I was at Stamford Bridge and Lampard was doing that false nine thing with Kante, and we were getting destroyed on that left wing. And Carlo said after the game, like, we had to switch Modric and Fede because it was the only way to improve defensively on that side, on that left side. Modric just couldn't do it. And so there was that issue. The long diagonal to Rafael Leao / Theo Hernandez behind Lucas Vazquez was unstoppable because Vazquez had zero chance defending Leao or Theo. A couple times Leao just kind of like brushed Vazquez off like he's some kind of gnat, like annoying little pest. He's like, can you get off me, please? Vazquez would just like bounce off him and like go 8 meters the other way. The towering header that Leao had over Vazquez too at the far post, which Lunin saved unbelievably. That we had no chance in that matchup. To make matters worse, like even when those diagonal balls would hit, we would like try kind of half-assed to hold Leao offside, but we couldn't because like either Rudiger or Militao would not be in line with the rest of them. By the way, that's another issue is that how do you look at this team and be like, yeah, we don't need to sign anyone? Vazquez is your only right back from now. It's November 5th. You mean to tell me you're going to go until May? Because I'm not even going to say June because I don't think the season is going to be alive by June. You're going to look at the season from now until May and be like, we only need that one guy. The solutions that have been proposed to me has been like, oh, we can put Militao right back if we need to. No, you can't. Because you don't have a center back to cover for Militao. And even if one day you wanted to do that and put Tchouameni or Vallejo center back, then who's next? This is not like something that makes any sense for you not to get a body. That's almost a different discussion. The last 2 games, Clásico and this one, we got worse defensively as the game wore on. And a lot of that had to do with the subs. Like today, you saw your team get cooked in the first half, and you had Camavinga on the bench, who was our best player in Clásico. And when he came off in the second half, the team got worse in Clásico. So you had Camavinga on the bench, like, okay, you could have introduced him. But instead of taking off Modric, you took off Fede and Tchouameni. On some level, I actually get that because even Fede is not playing to his best right now. You saw his reaction on some of those sequences in the first half defensively, including the one where Morata scored. The main culprit of that goal, of course, is Tchouameni, who he did this again in the Clásico too. I forgot to mention this to you and Matt on the post-game podcast of that night. He does this weird thing where after a free kick, he puts the ball down, rush, and tries to play a short pass. He did that in our own box against Barcelona, and we lost it. And then today, just this unnecessarily rushed pass against Milan. They come the other way, and it's Tchouameni who is tracking Morata. He doesn't pick him up after he gave the ball away. Inexcusable. So anyways, you make these subs, and then all of a sudden, like, Camavinga really can improve your defense because now you have a double pivot with Camavinga and Modric, with Brahim and Jude, who are not doing much defensively. And now you looked at an entire first half of Lucas Vazquez getting barbecued. And your solution was like, you know what? I'm going to take Fede off. Let's just see you. I want to see you really suffer. I feel like Leao and Theo didn't grind you enough. We really want to make sure they put you in a blender. We're going to take off your only help, Fede Valverde, off the field. So like Camavinga can't even help defensively in that situation when the system around him is complete mess as well. I don't see this getting any better. I honestly don't.
And this is why I wasn't, like, part of me wanted to be happy after the Dortmund game because we came back and I wanted to win that Barcelona game. And, that first half against Barcelona wasn't horrible as we've been over it. We had a shot that first half. But that second half of the Dortmund game felt so fake too because, like, part of it was us with our Real Madrid DNA. Part of it was also just Dortmund DNA, like, collapsing. I feel like they have some of that in them. And I feel like it gave us such a stupid, unnecessary sense of pride going into that Clásico. Oh, we're Real Madrid. Who are you? You haven't won anything last year. We just dispatched Dortmund 5-2. And that game, I think, was maybe that's partly why we pressed today. Maybe Carlo went, watched the film from the last 2 games, Barcelona, where we kind of started off sitting a little more, and then or in a mid block, I would say. And then Dortmund, when we just won the ball and obliterated them in the second half, and he thought, oh, let's just go aggressive like Dortmund. It's just he doesn't have that much time. I feel like tonight was a night you had to get it right after the Clásico. Not many coaches survive. Like, even when you have all the credit in the world at Real Madrid, surviving a 4-0 Clásico loss is not easy. I know Mourinho survived the 5-0 his first season, right? I think that was his first season. Yeah. So, yes, Mourinho did. But also Mourinho was tactically one of the more, he was one of the best coaches in the world tactically as well. Not just a man manager who can, like Carlo, even when we were winning last year, yes, he got his tactics right, but I don't think that was the main focus. There were points when we played beautiful football. But again, or you could say, even if you give him the tactical credit last season, that's an anomaly. You go look at his best teams. Usually there's something he does special, like Di Maria in midfield in 13-14. In Chelsea, he really unleashed Lampard, Drogba. They had some of their best goal-scoring years under him. Vinicius, he unlocked. But they're not going and looking at the whole team usually and saying, oh, this is perfect top to bottom. Like, there's usually something wrong with his teams. And just want to point that out too. Like, it's never perfect with him, but he can't afford to be too imperfect now. Like, the margins are thin. And what do you think the mood is around the club? Also, with the whole Bellingham,
horrible.
Also, the new Bellingham role, I didn't see it. Like, I know they tried to find him in the box. The fundamental problem is that, people act like he wasn't playing 2 positions at once last season. He was. He was still our striker in possession, come midfielder, and a midfielder out of possession. Very much played 2 roles. Had to cover 2 players worth of positions last season. But we had the ball. So when we have the ball, we had Cruz, so he could actually play striker. And this is why, we've tried dropping him into midfield. I get the urge. He looks good dribbling there, but he's not some crazy central midfielder who will make everyone else get better. I think he makes midfielder. I think he can help midfielders increase their output by getting on the end of their passes. I don't think he should be the one creating for everyone. And so I don't think you can solve it without actually controlling the game. This doesn't solve with personnel. You don't just stick him at striker. He's going to come and defend because he's Jude Bellingham. You don't sign him to make him a more limited player. You let him run and defend. But the point is, we had the ball, so he could camp in the box last season. He can't camp anywhere now. He has to stitch it and finish the move.
Right. And this goes back to the lack of clarity in the roles. And I think we need to have more rigid structures. I think it's a little bit too overly fluid. Jude Bellingham has one of the fuzziest roles in world football because he just has to be literally Alfredo Di Stefano. He has to play striker. He has to play right wing. He has to connect with Vinny in the left half space. He has to cover for Vasquez, or he has to cover for Mendy. He has to track back. He has to hunt players down pressing. And again, it's just the problem is when you have so much fluidity, that also is one of the challenges of getting a defensive structure. You don't have people in the right place on any given sequence, and it's just chaos. It's mayhem. Here are a list of things we have to talk about today that we have to hit. We have to talk about Carlo's future. We have to talk about who's to blame for all this mess, from the board to the players to the coach. We have to talk about, if Carlo was not to continue, is there a viable path to bring someone in who would improve the team mid-season, which is not easy to do. We also have to take super chats. We also have to address the post-game press conference quotes, which no doubt will be very interesting. So those are the list of... Yeah.
One brief point, because it wasn't on the list, so I'll finish it now. Just to finish what you were saying, Tchouaméni has had flaws. Out of possession, I still lean towards assuming he figures it out. In possession, I feel like, yes, at points you can just look at him and say, hey, a better player doesn't make those mistakes, structure or no structure. The other thing, I think one thing that's shifted my view on him is not even my view of him hasn't changed too much. I still think there's a fitness problem where he's gotten injured here and there. The World Cup took away his rhythm when he was looking so good 18 months ago. He looks good for France still, so I still believe in him. But I think Camavinga has started looking much better in build-up, like with each game. And he's been looking on. You could argue he's been on this level since he came into the lineup last year. When all the injuries were happening, there were points when Tchouaméni was out, he was playing more. But yeah, I just think he's starting. Like Camavinga is really leaning into this positionalist thing, and it's encouraging Carlo to continue. Like Tchouaméni needs the more fixed positions, but Camavinga comes in, he receives like left or right side in any phase now, and pretty comfortably. That's a big change. So just wanted to point that out because I've been a big Tchouaméni defender, but I do think in this system, Camavinga's better now, and I think Camavinga is a better player as well. I just still believe in Tchouaméni, but yeah, just wanted to point that out. I still believe in him under a better coach, though.
The other thing we'll add to the list is Goulet and Endrick. So we have like 200 things that we're going to hit break in the audio. All right, here's where I think we go, Sid. Here are the things that I think are not Ancelotti's fault. We'll start there, and then we'll talk about things that we think are in his control. The ACL injuries, although most of those were last season. The big one this season was obviously Jean Martinez. David Alaba not being back until 2025 at best has been a huge thing. The lack of signings to reinforce the defensive line. Some of the boneheaded defensive plays that are down to individual error. The offside fiasco against Barca. The poor finishing when the chances are created. There actually were a ton today. But they're falling to like Militao or like Rudiger. And Jude's scoring has been, not what it was last season. Am I missing anything?
No, I think that's good. That's a good list of the things you can not attribute to him. I would include the ACLs, by the way. I know you were hesitant, but Alaba's still out this season, so
yeah.
Well, the whole defender squad planning situation is not on him.
All right. I'll let you take over the things that he's done wrong this season.
Yeah, who the chances are falling to, how they're falling, partly on him. I will say 50% of the blame is to the board in that regard because of Joselu not being replaced. It's just like, oh, he's gone. What do we do? Like, they just shrug. So the board's pride is like, I think if we had to like combine every point of yours, though, the things you can't blame on Carlo, I think the board's pride is like 80-90% of it. The board is like a little prideful, a little complacent, a little too confident in their approach, a little too convinced the trade-offs that they take will pay off every time. So there's that. And then his problem, offense, I'll give him 50% of the flaws. Like, let's say the offense can't be perfect without a Joselu. The build-up and defense, all him. That's like 100% him. The defenders are like under a different coach would build up the ball better. Like if we sat deep and played patiently, the same defenders would rack up clean sheets, man. Like there's no question they'd rack up the clean sheets. We saw it under Zidane. Lucas Vazquez, the last time he played this much was under Zidane, and we were still winning games 1-0. Like the problem was not enough scoring, but it was not like the lack of a strategy. The problem was, hey, we are boring in the final third. It wasn't, hey, we have no problem in every single phase of play on both sides of the ball. So, yeah, everything defensively is on Carlo. The build-up, the speed of play in the first and second phase that's leading to us not controlling games is on Carlo. Even if we don't create more chances, everything other than that is on him. And because if you control the game longer, then you don't need to create as many chances and you inevitably concede less chances. So you can win the game with less chances. He's choosing to play the game that way. And also, I would say the lack of development between Goulet, Endrick, and even Tchouaméni, I would put on Carlo. I would argue that Tchouaméni's on-ball issues are on Carlo. Goulet and Endrick not playing is on Carlo because he can get rigid. Yeah, I mean, you can credit him for Brahim, but then you got to criticize him for... I know Brahim is one of a kind, by the way. I get it. Like, he's high in the hierarchy because he's two-footed and can dribble. Endrick I think he's a better dribbler than Goulet. He's a better dribbler than Endrick. he's like probably the best dribbler or one of them outside Vinny and Rodrigo. He's right there with anyone. Like he's as good as Mbappe as a dribbler in my opinion. Not as fast, but dribbling right there. So I get why he has that place in the hierarchy, but being conservative with the hierarchy, that's on Carlo. And we saw this a couple of years ago. He waited till the last 15 minutes against City to really throw the young guys on. Fede really got featured after the second leg against PSG. Like he went with Kroos and Modric a lot of that year, even though we had guys we should have been phasing them out with. And he may have been able to phase them out faster if he could coach in possession. And I think the lack of development of the young guys, some of it comes down to him.
Yeah, our good friend at Relevo, Jorge Picon, wrote this article about how Ancelotti has a problem that he's basically not allowed to bench a slew of players, namely Mbappe, Vinicius, Bellingham. Those were the three main ones.
By not allowed, is this like the Rafa Benitez literally not allowed to start Casemiro in El Clasico because Perez is watching, not allowed? And then Zidane comes in and overrides Perez? That type of not allowed? Is Carlo not like Zidane where he can pick all his shots on the lineup?
Similar, but I think it's almost less board related and more player related. Let me also give you like an example. Like in 2000, either 4, 5, or 6. I know that's very vague. Whatever year Vanderlei Luxemburgo was there. There was one game where he benched Ronaldo Nazario, and he did it in favor of team balance and defense. And at halftime, Florentino Perez comes down to the dressing room and says, "Why did you do that?" And then Luxemburgo gave his answer, and Florentino said, "Don't ever do that again," and put him on the field. And so everybody waved to my kids on, if you were watching on YouTube. It would mean the world to them. They were actually watching upstairs on the TV. They were watching live on YouTube on the Managing Madrid YouTube channel. My biggest fans. These are the guys why I don't get too upset about football anymore, because these guys are awesome.
Cheers. Cheers.
There you go. Look at his Real Madrid mug. Do you see it?
I just want to shout out. I want to shout out the Peña Madridista Bombay for giving me this mug after our live show. Thank you. Drinking some nice drink that keeps me chill after that game out of your mug.
Love it.
Wait, so Luxemburgo told him, put him on the field. I mean, I thought we were past this, bro. We lost 4-0 the last time you did this, when you told Rafa Benitez, don't play Casemiro, and our team of like attackers got mauled with Messi on the bench. Sergi Roberto mauled us the last time he interfered in team selection. So I'm obviously a little concerned if you're saying that's what's happening. But you say in this case, it's more the players have like an aura to them or a demeanor to where they don't want to be benched.
Yes. I think the bigger problem is... Sure, say hi really quick.
Hi.
Ghostbusters!
All right, thank you. No, I'm saying the problem is more... I think it's less to do with the board and more to do with the status of somebody like Mbappe, and also just the amount that Real Madrid invested in them in terms of, the big presentation, the money that they've invested in him and his family and all those fees they put, and obviously his name, right? And it's hard for Carlo to this won't be just a Carlo problem. Like if the next manager comes in, it's not like he's magically able to just do whatever he wants with the squad. There's going to be certain, rules or even unwritten rules that he'll have to abide by. And that's going to be challenging for the next manager as well. But I also think that being said, the solution, and this goes back to like when people were upset, like when we suggested Real Madrid should just stop pressing, because it's not the Real Madrid way. They said, like, you have to be high pressing, you have to be attacking football. No, we're giving solutions based on reality. And these are some of the realities you need to find solutions for. One is that you're not going to be able to press, so stop pressing. The other thing is that you're not going to be able to bench Mbappe, possibly for the next, not forget, but like next month or next 6 months, like for the next years potentially. And this is also different from like the Hazard situation, for example, because Hazard was completely broken physically and did not take himself, seriously or take care of his body. and Mbappe is much younger than someone like Hazard was, and it's not like this older superstar. So whoever is the manager is going to have to make that work. So that's one of the challenges. But I also think that Real Madrid have way too much talent in the squad, and I'm talking about these names: Mbappe, Vinny, Jude, Rodrigo, Endrick, Arda Güler. Do you know Brahim Diaz? Do you know how many teams in world football would kill to trade places with those players and have those like 6-7 attacking players in their team? There's no way that a collection of this much attacking talent should be this bad offensively. And I think that's on Carlo. That's on Carlo for not being able to find the right synergy between Mbappe and Vinicius and the rest. It's on Carlo to fix the build-up structure. The system cannot fall apart when Toni Kroos leaves because he's just so freaking smart and so talented and generational that, like, oh, you take him out and all of a sudden you can't build up properly. How many teams in world football have Toni Kroos? 0. So I think this is on Carlo on not being able to fix the defensive structure. And I also think that this is a salvageable situation, but it's not going to be salvaged this season if you continue to do the same things you're doing. And that's why I'm skeptical of Carlo continuing, because there has been not a single thing that has improved this season. Not a single thing has gone in the correct direction, as I said earlier.
One elephant in the room we have to address, probably the only area where I'll defend Carlo, is there's so many things that have culturally shifted at this club. Like, we don't press. We have a young athletic team that would be better off pressing. We don't coach in possession. We lost the one guy who coached our possession play on the pitch. We are used to crossing. We don't have anyone to cross it to this season. But out of those, like the Kroos one, I think you really can defend him logically, in the sense that I'm not saying things will get better. All my criticisms of Carlo still hold. But logically speaking, Man City have been fucking garbage ever since Rodri came off, man. They have been terrible. Sorry if I wasn't supposed to use that profanity. But Man City just lost 4-1 to Sporting. Now, Sporting aren't a bad team. They have Man United's new coach, Ruben Amorim. They have Victor Gyökeres, who's very much a top 5 leagues level striker, sitting in Portugal. But they lost 4-1 to them. They lost over the weekend, and they've been horrible. Like, the XG's bad. Like, they look terrible, Kiyan. Like Pep can't do anything about it. Level of terrible. There's nothing he can do to replace Rodri. But here's where I will say there's a difference. First, there's no question Rodri's great, but I feel like, yes, they're a system team. And so they've spent season after season for 3-4 years now, increasingly becoming reliant on him. I guess we did the same for Kroos. We had a preseason, though. We knew he's leaving. Like, Pep saw Rodri tear his ACL on the pitch, and it's like, tomorrow, hey, you're going into the rest of your season without your midfield general. And I get that we had to do that without our center backs and goalie. But it's just like, if you took Kroos away from us mid-season last season, that's it. Our season's over. Like, we're not going – no matter who we play, we're not making it through. And so when you have a full preseason, I think there's a little more criticism. If you gave Pep – if Rodri was like ACL torn last game of the season last year, and they go into the summer knowing like, hey, we need to sign a replacement, I don't think they're looking this bad. I think they figure it out. That's my argument against the argument that Kroos and Rodri, the situations are the same. It's not the exact same. And I think, honestly, I think we're a more talented team than Man City. That's the other thing. I think our players are better.
Yeah, I saw, before we hit record, I saw the goals that Sporting scored against Manchester City, and it gave me no consolation about our situation, to be quite honest with you. But I will say this: I think Real Madrid are far less reactionary as an organization as they used to be. If this exact situation happened, let's say 2000. We'll just go back to literally the last time Carlo got sacked in 2015. He would have been sacked for something like this, I think. And this part is not I'm not reporting anything. This is not based on a source or whatever. This is just my hunch. Unless Real Madrid have a manager that is clearly better than Carlo Ancelotti walking in and saving the situation right now, they're not going to do anything. Consider these things. Klopp has a job. A lot of these guys that you would look at, like Xabi, has a job. You're not going to get them mid-season. Unless you do something like Manchester United did and is like really, really work a new deal with a team and pay a lot of money to get them out of that situation, which I don't think is a realistic scenario for Real Madrid. Is it possible? Yes. I just don't see Real Madrid doing that. Also, like, if you're getting like a Castilla interim, this is not going to get better. Raul is not walking through that door and fixing this. I really don't believe that. And for those calling for Arbeloa instead, that's also not a possible scenario. Like, you're not going to get the Juvenil A manager leapfrogging the Castilla manager and becoming the coach. That's not going to happen. It's not a realistic scenario. And
this could be a great chance to sorry, I have to say, this could be a chance to Solari Raul. Just like, listen, we know you're not cut out for it. Just come in, show everyone, and goodbye, buddy. Sorry, Raul. I know you're a club legend, but I do not want you coaching this team. And, you know, this is like, I feel like this is a Solari situation, though. I just want to point that out. Like, maybe we don't get better. This team is better than it was that season. It's not like a three-peat winning team at the end of a cycle. It's too young for that. But I think we got to accept that, like, we just need to change it so that someone comes in and plays pragmatically if Carlo won't do it. And you live with the results, man. We're not. Why does everyone expect us to like win the treble if we change coach this season? Like, hey, don't sack Carlo unless you sack Carlo to like put him out of his own misery. Yeah. Okay. So, and I mean, what happened at the end of that? Solari, a lot of people are saying Zidane. I think that we have pretty much agreed to hire Alonso at the end of the season is the vibe I get. I don't like, speaking of reactionary, I don't think they're looking at this questionable start Leverkusen have had this season, and it's been very questionable. Definitely going to do an episode, by the way, at some point soon, just about whether Alonso's like follow-up act has been good enough. I think they've decided that he's the guy. So if he's the guy, Zidane's not a possibility, right? It's insulting to tell Zidane to come in and be interim coach for just one season, because like this guy would want to continue coaching the team. So if you bring him in, then you're agreeing to bring him back for like 3 seasons.
I actually have a counter to that. I think it would be Zidane's dream to not be committed long term. I think it would be his dream to come in, take a break from traveling the world, eating croissants and biking around Paris, France, and having like it's his dream to not be committed to something long term, like to just like send out the bat signal. Hey Zizou, come in for a few months. If you feel like staying beyond that, your call. But we know that you love walking away from your contract just to rest and recharge. I think that would actually be what he would prefer.
I would love him from a tactical perspective, because this dude is literally would bring every single thing we asked for, he would do, like in a heartbeat. Like it's what he did every time things went wrong the second spell. Like, you remember, he would shore up the defense. He would shore up the possession. And like you said earlier in the episode, it would be get the first 2/3 solid and then just hope something bounces your way in the final third. And that would be better than this. Like, I still think if everyone just sit back compact, then things would open up front for us inevitably. But right now we're not compact. We're opening up for other teams.
The case for Zidane would be 2 things to me. Rigidity, defensive structure, and possibly recharging Mbappe because of the connection.
I think I think the offense is the one thing that may not be great even under him, because
but if your defense improves, you actually might get better offensive opportunities with the transition attacks.
Right, and so that's where I guess I'm skeptical. I feel like I still can't believe he needed one more wake-up call. But if he takes it today, Carlo can still go do that. Like, he can go tomorrow and be like, hey, guys, practice defending in a 4-4-2 but narrow, or like a 4-5-1 or 4-6-0. He can start that tomorrow. That's all it takes. And so, but I am skeptical that he solves Mbappe, in the sense that I think the final third is where Zidane was weakest last time, because not even that he's weak. I feel like he did a decent job with the players he had, but because he's so structured in the first two thirds, like you're kind of like, the way he likes arriving in the final third is with everything slowed down, like set. And so to create chances from that requires like really good talent. He didn't have that last time, and I feel like he pulled out so many little tricks, like so many tricks where you'd have Benzema pin. He had those Asensio off the bench, like place your shots in the corner moves. Like he tried everything. So maybe the attackers are just better this time, so that doesn't matter. But that's also why I just feel so blindsided by Carlo today. The same reason it's so easy to bring a Zidane in and just sit back. Carlo could do that tomorrow. And like, you can say that the team has grown tired of his voice, Kiyan, but like that he's clearly not telling them to sit back. Like, I would love to see how like they look. And I think it would be a damn shame if they don't sit back before Carlo leaves. Like, he can't go out pressing, dude. Like, you can't go out trying something you've never achieved in your whole career.
There's another point to this that I think is worth mentioning. Generally, I think managers have a 3-year cycle before the message just gets hard to it just gets harder to communicate and instill the same hunger. And I think that's worth something just bringing up, that it sometimes just a change in voice can help.
That's very famous, actually. If you've ever, the Hungarian coach, is it Bela Gutman? Like, the 4th year is fatal. It's really famous. Jonathan Wilson's written about this in Tactics.
And maybe that's where I got it from then. Yeah, it's from someone else. It wasn't me making that up. Yeah. Oh,
yeah. The 4th year is fatal. And Jonathan Wilson wrote about this in the context of Pep Guardiola's 4th season at Barcelona and all the way back 11-12. But because Mourinho also was the famous 3-year man, as you remember, or sometimes even 2-year. But the 4th year with Mourinho is always fatal. And
Mourinho lasting 3 years really felt like, holy shit, 3 years at Real Madrid, that might as well be a lifetime. Like, it's unheard of a manager lasting that long at Real Madrid.
And that's where last time, if you remember, I was really like, I actually didn't believe in Carlo as a coach when he came in. I just believed in two things. One, I knew he wouldn't build up the way Zidane does. So I figured maybe if we attack differently, Vinny gets loosened up. I felt like that could happen. I didn't think it would happen in a way where we're good enough to win the Champions League. Different story. Two, I just felt Zidane. It's not that Zidane had been here for too much time. It's that like that 2019 season was also partly Zidane. So that's almost 6 full years in a row of Zidane. He had ended 5 of 6 seasons in a row in charge. So I'm with you. It feels very much like when Zidane was ending. Like, you just need a change in message. All right. So let's say Zidane, maybe he's like, hey, I want to come back 2 years. If Xabi's coming, it's good. You guys figure it out. Let's just say that happens and we can't bring him back, because bringing him back is the easy decision to make. Like, you think Raul gets it? You give it to Guti for a few months.
Yeah, it's not happening. That is Guti basically checked out and he's like, I'm on Chiringuito now, guys. It's not my coaching career is done. And I don't think Raul is the guy who's going to do it.
Wasn't Guti supposed to be the next, like, the Pep of Real Madrid? Like, the guy who has us playing, like, sweet, like, triangles?
He was incredible at Juvenil A. Then he went to Almeria. And then he just went to Chiringuito and started to just be a talking head. I don't know what happened there. Anything else on the Ancelotti, Zidane coaching thing before we move on?
Would you bring Del Bosque out of retirement?
No.
I'm kidding. I don't even know why I said that.
No, it's not.
It's so funny.
I love Del Bosque, one of my favorites of all time, but that was like 20 years ago.
It's so funny though. Like, teams like Premier League teams will go for a coach and they'll like exhaust. Like, Chelsea will search through, like, they'll look through everywhere. They'll search in the ocean, look for every name. Same for Man U. Man City, exhaustive searches. Liverpool, pretty big searches. And for us, it's like, okay, are you getting the last guy who was your coach? Oh, Mourinho. Why haven't we brought up Mourinho? Like, he's always every time there's a coaching change, Mourinho's in the list too, right? He's always in. I think that's the funniest thing. It's always Mourinho, Zidane, Ancelotti. Like, those three are ever present. And now Xabi. At least we have Xabi now. Like, at least we have a new name to add to the list, because I was getting bored. This is literally what it was when Literally, wasn't this how it was when we were trying to replace Solari, look for our new coach? It was the same names then. Last time
it was. I remember being at that Ajax game, the 4-1, and not the whole crowd, but like a bunch of the crowd was chanting for Mourinho. Like, it's the same names, but pretty much.
Yeah. At least Antonio Conte has a job, so we're not wasting our
Thank
time.
God. I have no interest in Antonio Conte. All right, listen. We have to discuss super chats. We got a ton of super chats. We have 15 super chats as of now. We also have to discuss Carlo Ancelotti's post-game quotes. And we figured out this audio thing. So we're going to take a quick break and come back and do those things. And also talk about Goulet and Endrick. I think that's an important talking point as well. Supportive and positive environment. TAC programming utilizes their unique 5-star development system, providing all students 5 measurable levels with scaffolded criteria to achieve success, maintain motivation, and build knowledge. In addition to year-round developmental programming, the TAC Sports Group has built one of the premier soccer academies in the GTA, developing confident, highly skilled soccer players through their European community-based developmental model. The principles of discipline, fair play, leadership, responsibility, critical thinking, respect, self-confidence, determination, hard work, and belonging are instilled in every aspect of the TAC Sports Group. We invite you to discover how the TAC Sports Group is shaping the future of child and teen programming by visiting their website at tacsports.ca. Shout out TAC. Look forward to playing some footy at your academy on December 6th. This is the second consecutive game where neither Endrick and Goulet nor Goulet came in while the team was getting cooked at home. What do you make of this situation?
I think if Endrick was like a Joselu height, I think he'd see the minutes more easily. But because he's shorter and he's not like a traditional big burly striker, I think Carlos sometimes is like, okay, I'm not like, I don't think he's in a rush to play him. I'll actually go and say I'm a little surprised Endrick just started getting all that burn immediately and scoring. I was a little surprised. Like he has the confidence. The fact that he got off the mark so fast was surprising. But fine, he's confident. We signed players like that to do that. But I didn't think Carlo would give him that run early on. Goulet is a little more surprising to me because listen, Modric has had great games this season, not including tonight, and like he's had some great games in possession this season. And I would argue even tonight, like in possession is never the problem with him. Like he just as soon as he touches the ball, you're like, God damn it, whatever it takes to put you on the field, I get why you do it. But I feel like there needs to be more trust for Goulet for sure in that scenario because he has the legs, he has the energy, he's young. I think the problem with him there is though he looks at him, he's like, you're not physically going to give me a bigger advantage than Modric. He doesn't see a gap physically. Even if we see the gap, Kiyan, Goulet's like superior physicality doesn't translate into like a lot more interceptions. Like he's just younger. He's not like prime Modric is going to be a better defender than any version of Goulet probably.
Well, I mean, prime Modric, it's almost hard to remember now because of the last couple of years, but prime Modric was unbelievable on defense.
Yeah,
both as a presser and a tracker.
Yeah, and I would argue the slowdowns have been happening way longer than 2 years. I think it's been happening since 2018, except what happened was in between, Fede came in and the lineup changes mean Modric had like that 10-game stretch during the pandemic where he looked great again. I think he's had bursts, but then in 2022, those big games, we kind of had to bring Camavinga on and bring the energy on before we won them in the Champions League. Even, when he was on, we weren't always a big positive in his minutes. And I think the limited minutes since Tchouaméni came in, since Fede came into the lineup, kept him fresh. But this has been the case with Modric. And I guess this is the worry. And I guess this was the feeling I had, Kiyan, during the final. Because I had this weird sinking feeling in my stomach. I told you guys after the final, watching Cruz, like I didn't have a good feeling. Like I felt angry, felt like shouting at him. And I think these emotions everyone's experiencing now, Kiyan, my body was just alerting me in advance. It's like, hey, you're gonna feel sick. Just feel sick now. Get it over with, because it's all coming in the fall. But I think he doesn't see as big a gap between them defensively. Like if Endrick was big and tall, if Goulet was like a little more of a like central midfielder, he might do it. But because he has to kind of like siphon them into different roles, he's getting nervous. He's dropping the ball because, you know, Carlo, when the chips are down, he's trusting his vets.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a good point. At least as to why Ancelotti rationalizes it the way he does. As you said, when the chips are down, he will trust basically the guys who have brought him this far and the ones who he's gone to war with for years and he's trusted. And if you're in a situation where you have 3-4 goals, then it's more likely that he's going to throw on people like Endrick and Goulet. I do think part of the barrier is, again, I love him, but Luka Modric, because of his status, has to also play a certain amount of minutes. And I don't think Modric is competing with someone like Endrick, obviously, but I do think he's competing with someone like Goulet. And I've just been a fan long enough, really, since the late 90s and thinking back to like some of those moments where Real Madrid were in such a crisis and desperate times. You know, Raul came in as a 17-year-old and basically took the torch from Butragueño when the team was struggling and they needed someone up top to actually, and Raul was extremely raw. He made a ton of mistakes. He missed a ton of chances, but there was something there. There was an energy to him that was electric and infectious. In some ways, that's kind of, you know, not to compare Endrick to an all-time great like Raul right now, but just kind of like what Endrick reminds me of right now, in that extremely raw, chaotic, but he's like a bowling ball offensively. Some shit happens when he's on the field. So it's not the worst idea to me to throw him on and kind of develop. And Goulet has honestly looked good to me almost every time he's played. And this goes back, this is really not, as you alluded to, it's not really on meritocracy. It's about trust at this point. And that's, I think, some of the challenges that Carlo has always had in entrusting other players.
I would love to see a Jude, Goulet, Mbappe, Vinny double pivot lineup. And I don't get why we haven't seen it enough. Like, that's a no-brainer on paper. You can have Bellingham and Vinny on the left, Mbappe and Goulet on the right. Like, that's a no-brainer lineup to me. Bellingham through the middle, double pivot of Fede, Camavinga, or Fede, Tchouaméni. I mean, we just haven't seen some of these lineups that we thought would be effective at all. We've seen a lot of this, like him try to make better variants on last season, like just change whatever you have to from last season. Like Modric instead of Cruz was kind of what we saw today, and Mbappe instead of Rodrigo from last season. But hey, it's tricky when you delegate to the players. You know, you live and die by the players' limitations and successes and whatever the circumstances lead to.
Like clockwork, Ancelotti after the game. The team is not compact. We have to be more compact, more organized. We have conceded many goals. The team is not well organized on the field, and we have to work on this. I'm kind of just desensitized to these words by now. I don't really care what is said. And it, you know, I understand why Carlo has to say it, but, you know, I just want to see some actual results and real improvements, and I don't really want to hear these words anymore. What?
I just want to say, sometimes I wonder, like, because I know we're very critical of a guy who's a professional. I get this imposter syndrome where I'm just like, am I exaggerating? Like, is Carlo really just going out there and throwing platitudes at the players? Are they not practicing? And sometimes I feel crazy, but when you watch other teams, you realize like better is possible. It's not like we are one of one in terms of who we sign.
Yeah.
But we're not one of one in terms of how, like, exactly how we play in every situation. We adopt things from the larger body of football. And I'd like to think that, like, you know, we're not just stupid idiots on armchairs. Like, I'd like to think he could actually do better, you know? Like, if you could go peek behind the scenes, Kiyan, you ever wonder, would you be as critical? If you could go sit in the dressing room with Carlo, see everything going on, would you be this critical or would you be humbled? And like, I feel like I'd be humbled, but in this case, I really do think he's just going out there and shouting platitudes at them. Like he's not actually doing the sophisticated work. And I think that exact work, if you watched trainings from other teams, you would see it being like happening.
I have imposter syndrome all the time. I mean, I felt incredibly uneasy, and it kind of was like cringing in my chair earlier when you said, even we couldn't teach Carlo. I was like, I have nothing to teach Carlo. I'm a nobody in in my office, and Carlo Ancelotti is a legend. He's the greatest Champions League manager of all time. I mean, I even just like talking about things he can improve makes me uncomfortable because I mean just that is like, I try to do it in a very humble way, but we're just analyzing what we're seeing, what we think the solutions are. So obviously when he's on the ground and he's managing some of the biggest egos and superstars, that can't be easy. And I'm sure there is a scenario where he's trying to get a message across and it's not getting across. I'm very sympathetic to that aspect of it too. But this goes back, I guess, to the point of like, sometimes you just need a new voice and a new direction. And it's hard to motivate the players the same way you did, 1, 2, 3 years ago. And that's the way I look at it.
I would say don't get too cringe when I say something like that, in the sense that coaches have burners too, Kiyan. You never know who's reading you. They're not looking to you for direction, but they're always open to possibilities. And the thing is, when you're out there in the war seat, like you're going to war every day. You're gonna have blind spots. It's impossible to be. You're on the podcast every single podcast. There are going to be some things that someone who comes on once a week does differently than you because you're here every day. The same way when you show up every day, there's just some things that you like inevitably get used to that don't show up like as novel to you. You may not notice things. And so coaches have burners. They go read for a different perspective. They don't internalize every perspective, but they're open-minded. And from that perspective, like I don't feel completely as an imposter either. Like as outsiders, you do notice things because all you do is observe all day. You're not in the hot seat.
I'm very aware of how actually this podcast shapes narratives, and it kind of actually freaks me out how like you'll say something and then the next day it's on social media. I mean, we won't name any names. We know that people have texted us who appear on TV, and then at halftime, they'll basically reword that text for their analysis on TV. I'm pretty aware of that. I mean, look, you and I had the whole Goulart thing too in the preseason.
That was so funny.
It's
that was you. You got it. Like you nailed it. And then I just had to point it out. Like, hey, Kiyan asked this, and he started doing this as it happened. But yeah, I mean, even in that case, it could be something Carlo's thinking about. You bring it up to him and he's like, maybe not a bad idea. It's not you don't get the credit for it, but like these people hear things for sure. But I didn't know that about, I didn't know it gets to the point where people go on TV with things you've said. I didn't know about that.
Yeah. Not in like a malicious way. Like I'm happy to just give them insight in my opinion. And that's not a big deal. But it is sometimes it just does freak me out how much influence that this silly podcast actually has. The one thing that also stood out from the post-game presser is that he said Fede wasn't at 100%. He had a back problem. So something that just kind of also explains the sub at halftime.
That actually makes sense. I didn't say it earlier because we were just trashing Carlo, and it just didn't feel right to come out and defend him there. But if Fede is coming off, it's like with the number of minutes he's played, it's probably best to not crack jokes about it, unfortunately. It probably doesn't mean the best thing. And worst case, just mathematically, I don't know what this injury is, but you just hope this isn't the beginning of back problems, and you just hope it's a little problem, singular.
We have a ton of stuff from the actual game too. I feel like we haven't discussed, but we'll save for the super chats. We now have 16 super chats. If you want to sneak in some more super chats, you can do that right now. We're going to take a very quick break, and we'll be back to answer some super chats. Thanks for bearing with us. We usually don't put super chats off until this far into the podcast, but we'll get to them in a second. All right, quick break to share an important message from one of our presenting sponsors, Moji Mates. Head on over to moji-mates.com. That's moji-mates.com. moji-mates.com, moji-mates.com to see some of the coolest looking football swag you'll ever see. All those cool shirts you see the Managing Madrid podcast hosts wear on the podcast on YouTube, they're all from Moji Mates. Look at this one. This one might be my new favorite. BBC, Bale, Benzema, Cristiano, the orange shirt. Remember that year we cooked Schalke in the Champions League away from home with those orange kits? Yeah, that one. This is beautiful. That and a ton more, including all the shirts you see here. This one here, Zidane, France. That's my kids' favorite. Both of them, they have this one, and they are just in Zidane fanboy phase of their life right now, which probably will never end until the day they die and they're 200 years old in their rocking chair. So many cool things here. And if you're a Managing Madrid podcast listener and you like these shirts, which is literally you listening to this, you get 15% off. So go to moji-mates.com, use code MM15OFF for 15% off. That's moji-mates.com, use code MM15OFF. We have a ton of super chats. We're going to starting.
Let's use them to get through the game. I'm sure they'll ask about the game in different instances.
Yeah, game and whatever else comes your way. We got you. We're going to answer these. Nishlish Patel says, I'm scared of Jude leaving us.
I feel it in that, I feel like we're just pissing him off for no reason. And I feel his frustration. I think we all feel his frustration. I think we feel it from his body language. When every expression he makes, every time he goes and makes a tackle that leads to nothing because we're not structured in a way where we actually win the ball and create chances with it. I feel it, man. And it's a lot of frustrated defending. Last season, it made sense because we were winning. When you can't have a guy who work this hard for these results. So I get
it. Sometimes it's hard for us to see lights at the end of the tunnel when things are this bad. But Jude Bellingham has an entire Real Madrid career ahead of him. And these are the moments you look back on, you were like, the suffering was worth it for, sometimes the adversity that players go through together can make them stronger on the other side. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case this season, but I would not be surprised if we look back on this in a year or two and we're like, that was a tough period. That was a tough transition we went through, but I think Bellingham is going to be here for a long time.
I agree. For what it's worth, I agree, and I think the same because his that first season memory is too good for him to contemplate leaving.
Sheikh Atiri says, how worse will it have to take for Carlo to be fired? What does Tchouaméni have to do to get benched? Why isn't France starting? Where were Arda and Endrick? So I think the last one we did have the segment on that. How worse will it have to take for Carlo to be fired? He has a lot of credit in the bank. Like I said earlier, it depends on who the options are.
I think he only gets one or two more of these bad pressing games. I think if he sits back and the tactics change, I think it changes his leash as long as we're our floor raises and we're more competitive. And by floor, not only game to game, but within the game, actually competing in a half, defending for 20, 30 minutes, not having a stretch where we fall apart like we do now. But I think this type of game with the press, Kiyan, if this happens against Osasuna, I think it's over because Osasuna ripped apart Barcelona already. They ripped their offside trap apart.
Also, that Osasuna game is one of those early kickoffs. It's at 2 p.m. local time, which is 8 a.m. on Eastern. When was the last time we looked good in an early kickoff? I can't remember. It's always just this weird thing that catches us off guard. So you got Osasuna, Leganes, Liverpool, Getafe, Athletic in San Mamés, Girona away, Atalanta away, Rayo away.
We looked good during the early kickoff. The first game when the pandemic restarted, Kiyan. You remember that game?
Thank God. No, I don't remember that.
Hazard scored too. So it was sign of things to come. Just kidding. It was sunny that day. We played well. It's usually not looking good when it's sunny. I do think Liverpool, by the way, is one of I think Osasuna and Liverpool are his last chances. Circle those games on the calendar. The thing with Liverpool is, are you afraid that he screws up the Champions League group stage, because then you have to take action before Liverpool and the international break. So
well, this is what this is my biggest concern, is that there is no real easy way out of this. Because if you continue this way, you might lose the season much faster than you think. Let's say if you have a bad loss against Liverpool, for argument's sake, whoever comes in next, you got Atletico away in San Mamés, Girona away, Atalanta away, Rayo Vallecano away in Vallecas, which is literally hell on earth for us. So there's no easy way out. I don't know. It's just going to be a tough situation to navigate regardless. And that's why I think the club will probably just lean towards keeping Carlo, because there's no real easy way out mid-season.
If you feel like an interim coach will make a difference, though, I think you decide either Osasuna, international break, or Liverpool. I think, like, if a change is happening, I think those are 3-year prime time, or maybe you wait till after this or around the Super Cup in January, like they did with Benitez. You remember? I know Benitez is different, but just look, it's still a historical precedent. Like, we lost 4-0 in November. We had some fucking horrible performances November, December. They waited all the way till January and sacked him after a loss, I think, in January. So, Fran is not starting because...
Yeah, Fran is another one. Like, we talk about Goulet and Endrick. He should be playing. He's been better than Mendy this season.
He does look better offensively. I think part of it is also, like, Carlos set this thing with his players. He doesn't want to ruin Mendy's confidence. I guess if you, like, shuffle the lineup too much and you piss off the starters and you don't get results, you lose the whole dressing room. Maybe he wants to maintain some loyalty. He feels like they'll repay his faith. Tchouaméni, I was a little surprised he played today. But I guess Camavinga is still returning to full fitness. It's possible that this still happens in the near future, regardless of coach.
Coconut Skin says, 55th minute, build up on the right, and Jude, Vinny, and Mbappe standing 2 feet apart from each other, waiting for the ball. Who takes over this team?
Cruz. I'm just kidding. It's such a sad thing that it's what is it, November 5th, and he's still someone we have to mention almost every week.
There were definitely a few moments in this game where, like, for example, Mbappe would get past his man, cut to the byline, put it in the cutback, and nobody's there. Bellingham creates separation from his man on the wing, gets the ball into the box, nobody there.
Because they're not strikers. Bellingham's the only guy who... Vinny's not like some get on the end of crosses guy. Mbappe is not a, like, box crasher. These are the cutback guys. These are the guys who dribble to the byline. So, I mean, that's a profile problem. But that's also, I think, that's the one area that I think Zidane would struggle with too, for what it's worth. But yeah, I feel like
that's why I think Zidane would just focus on transition attacks and not anything else, probably.
You think? I feel like he'd play slow though, and I think he'd get everyone deep, 4-6-0, or 4-5-1. That's for sure. From there, you don't think he slows it down and we start having a lot more possession? I think that's how he would play. We don't create as much. Like, you see how now we have, like, even in games we lose, we have like 5 to 7 half chances when the game is close. Like, we're just there arriving, and then we don't do anything once we arrive. I think that would change, where because we have the ball so much, we wouldn't have so many situations where we feel like the pass is on. So we'd be a lot more conservative, but we'd have control, and we'd still have games we win because Vinny just shoots it from outside the box. We could do some of that fancy Man City stuff, where that even Zidane liked doing a little bit last time because he was so positional, where you spread the ball out wide to Vinny and Mbappe, and then you use the space they create to shoot long from the middle, like Foden did to us in the first leg, or like we did a bit with Cruz, Asensio under Zidane last time. I don't think anyone takes over this team and build up under Carlo, though. I think with Cruz gone, I think this is officially the end of the Real Madrid possession era until we have a different coach. Like that 2014 to 24, say goodbye till we have a different coach. Would you agree there? Like Zidane or Alonso needs to come in before we have possession again?
Maybe, but I do think if there's like real solutions, real adjustments being made now with Carlo, if he just came to the realization tomorrow that like let's just do ugly, deep, low block counter-attacking football, I think a lot of this would improve. And that's like if that probably is like the easiest path to salvaging this season in some way, is not to continue and try to do this high line non-pressing BS. Just focus on the strengths of your team. You have ball winners in midfield. You have a left back that can attack but who can defend, and you have the quickest wingers in the world. So just capitalize on it.
One thing Mazen and I briefly talked about, very brief point, is like we accepted this against Man City in the second leg last year, Kiyan. We went to the Etihad and realized, hey, like we need more guys in defense or we may not survive defensively. So we brought Vinny back and we gave up the attack and we accepted it. Like we lived with it. Why don't we live with something instead of trying everything and failing at everything?
Yeah, I honestly I'm a little bit confused as to why Ancelotti tries to be so suicidal with the defensive line this year, because he's usually not like that. If push comes to shove, maybe there was pressure on him to play more attacking, free flowing football, but I'm a little bit confused as to why he's insisting with it, because it's obviously not working. Like I don't need to say that, it's just not working. Dipanjan Chatterjee says Valverde has been a big zero. Carlo is incapable. This came in like very early in the podcast, and obviously we have some clarity now that he was playing with a bad back. Jabran, our YouTube member, says this was the most embarrassing 2 weeks for Madrid I've ever seen. They just lacked Madridismo at this point. We were more compact. Chu refuses to step up. As a CDM, he's just a DM. Our midfield is roll eye emoji. If you want to chime in at any point, let me know.
It is up there. The last time it was this embarrassing was when when I really was questioning why I became a fan, when we lost 4-0 and Benitez was there. And when we sacked him for Zidane around that time, like I was really wondering what the hell, like what did I sign up for? Because we have the most stacked squad and we just never put it together. Have I signed up for like this like joke? Am I being mocked by God? Like what is this? And this is like, at least we've won so much since then, you know? We've won so many Champions Leagues. It feels a little better now.
I've said this before. I think I've said this with you. We are the most spoiled fan base in all sports. So we have to keep that into consideration when we go into meltdown mode.
Is this the most embarrassing you've seen? Like, because I feel like the Ballon d'Or with Vinny really like kind of puts a bow on it.
I didn't find the Vinny Ballon d'Or thing embarrassing. I found it more like it was clearly disrespectful the way it happened. It was farcical, and I think it more than anything it kind of exposed UEFA than embarrassed us. That's my take. The Clasico was way worse. I think that week from hell, the 3 basically eliminations in 1 week in 2019 with Solari was pretty bad. I would say much worse than this. And obviously, like there was just this revolving door of polemicas and drama for a good 20 years straight, like of my fandom. So these ones don't really faze me that much. It's been worse, but it's not been great. I agree with you there, Jabron.
Makes sense.
Nishlish says too long didn't read. Mad respect to Carlo for everything he's done for the club, but this is not a Carlo friendly team anymore. Also, Kama, Fran, Rodrigo need to start.
Rodrigo just came back from injury. Keep that in mind. But yeah, what I think that's a great way to summarize it. The team is not as friendly to Carlo as it was last few years in terms of how it's built for him.
Gibran says Carlo needs to give midfield roles and make them run movement drills until they puke. They are not moving off the ball correctly or passing vertically when appropriately or horizontally appropriately.
Can we do a little story, Kiyan? I did this on the last show, repeating it. the Bayern Munich story. That when he was at Bayern, like multiple players, I'll pull up the full list, but it's Lam. It's at least Lam, Xabi Alonso, Robin. Let me pull up the exact list. Yeah. Lam, Muller, Neuer, Boateng, Robin, Xabi Alonso all started creating separate training sessions from
Right.
Carlo.
Yeah.
Like that, Robin apparently said that like his kid's youth coach is better at player development and like challenging the players in practice than Carlo. So Carlo, he might not really make them do too many like off the ball movement drills, man. I think that's my precise concern. And I think that's actually one reason I'm very confident Xabi will make a good, even if he's having a bad follow-up season, I think Xabi would make a good coach here. Because Xabi wasn't the most press resistant player compared to a Cruz or a Rodri or a Thiago or a Xavi. He's the tier below of press resistance. Like it's been really written. Like if you pressed him high, he was great if you sat off him a little bit, or if you were tight but not all the way up. But super high press, you could expose him. And I think what that did is made him a coach who's very aware that you have to create the angles. You have to coach it in, especially because he played under Pep, who then manufactures all these build-up angles for you. And he started breaking, like he reached a new level of usage under Pep. Like he was great for us, but I believe he like broke. You remember he broke the Bundesliga touch record when he got there, the first few games in the Bundesliga under Pep, like immediately broke it. And it's because Pep like then further developed him into a more, like super on-ball ball magnet type, whereas he was already very good, but more of a two-way guy for us. And Alonso was creating separate training sessions. That should tell you everything. We're just like, we've won with him, so we're never going to hate him. But when I see Jude, I see a guy who could benefit from the same thing. I see a guy who's like, I bet Jude's probably looking at the Bayern thing and like that. I'm sure he sympathizes right now. And I'm sure several of our players want more direction and they can't get it.
Pavan Chavda says Tchouaméni at right back. Lucas Vazquez had no chance against Leao and Teo. Yeah, the fact that this is even an option just tells you that how dire our situation is with the depth chart in the back line. I do think you could, if you can talk him into it, Tchouaméni seems to be a better center back than a DM at this point, but that might be a more realistic / viable option. But again, none of this really makes sense that we're talking like this.
What about Fortea? You said you want to see him at right back?
I love Fortea, but that's not within the realm of realistic opportunities. I also would, what I would do with Fortea is just give him reps. But again, like, what are we talking about here?
Like a third division player?
No, he's really promising. I mean, he's a 17. Yeah, he is. But he's someone that I think has been so good at that level that it'll be worth just giving him some reps at the A-team level. And not like at the expense of like Goulet or Endrick off the bench. I mean, like, and this is the problem though. Like, how do you justify, if you're Carlo, like, how do you justify it to yourself to give a player like that reps and trust him when there's no time to actually do this? Like, look at the schedule. You tell me which games you think it makes sense for him to get minutes over Vasquez and give Vasquez some reps.
Zidane got minutes gave minutes to Hakimi, remember?
Initially, yeah. Zidane actually ended up deviating from the youth.
Yeah, by the end.
Yeah, by the end of it. But yeah, I just don't think Carlo will justify that to himself.
For sure.
What is that?
Militao right back is more realistic than Tchouaméni though. For now, yeah, like you said. But
yeah, I think it'll probably, the order would be something like Militao, Mendy, Fede Valverde.
Yeah.
Where are we? All right, here we are. This one's interesting. Avunu Orenetega says, Millie and Rudy are not a good pairing. Tchouaméni defending really poor. We have no structure, poor off-ball movements, no triangles around the box. When the ball goes wide, we don't attack the box. This reminds me of a point that I think I don't think I have made after this and the Clasico, which is Militao and Rudiger have had some disastrous defensive sequences. They've actually had a lot of good sequences. Their step-up interventions have been pretty good. But they also are similar in that they're both aggressive defenders and they will take gambles. Did you see Militao on, I think it was Milan's third goal? It was shambolic. He stepped up, got cooked, tried to recover, got cooked, fell over. And there was a little bit of give and take when you have Militao and Rudiger both hyper aggressive. Is it better to have a more composed ball-playing center back next to one of them?
Yeah, just someone who approaches the game maybe more cerebrally, like Alaba or even Nacho. Just they're not as gifted physically. They don't have an option but to play the game with their head more mentally. I guess these two are quite kind of similar in that regard. I do think, though, that if we sat back a little, they're so dominant physically that none of this matters. I think we're just stepping up like crazy, and it's a lot for them too. And just like it was a lot for Ramos and Varane when we stepped up, and we would play like two guys against 3 or 4 at the halfway line, and Ramos and Varane would have to just retreat, defend everyone. It feels a bit like that. Like everything in front of them is a mess too. So hard to tell. Like last season, if Militao was around with Rudiger, does it matter? Or like we were a different team defensively. So
yeah, the structure definitely matters. Yeah. There's no question. I think right now it's you see a lot of good moments from them individually, but then there's this also structural chaos with it. And I don't know. There seemed to be a lack of leadership on the field as well. In conjunction to the lack of direction from the bench and the stands from Carlo, there seems to be a lack of a leader, which is ironic because the next super chat is from Mr. Sushi22, who says Ramos should come back, in my opinion. I've actually been on this train. I think it's a low risk scenario. A body, he's still in shape. He's not obviously as good as he used to be, but I have no issue with him coming back. Willard says, Kiyan, remember when we first got Mbappe at the end of last season and we felt like things were going too well for us? Well, this is the bad luck. Don't you remember, Sid? I remember saying this for sure. It was like 2 days after we won the Champions League, we signed Mbappe, and I remember literally saying, I feel like things are going too well right now. This doesn't feel right.
Well, now Rodri won the Ballon d'Or. Look what we did. We got what we asked for. We're in hell. Rodri won the Ballon d'Or. Half the fan base thinks Kylian Mbappe is not going to come good.
By the way, I'd still make that trade. The last few years were so awesome that I think it's still a trade you'd make to suffer this season because
I think so too.
Achievements.
I was gonna say if you told me like this is how it would end with Carlo, I would be like, okay. But if you told me the journey was like that good, I wouldn't care because I wouldn't believe you when you told me the journey is that good. I wouldn't believe we win 2 Champions Leagues in 3 years without signing Mbappe. That would be I would never take that bet. I would never bet on that happening.
Well, Ewan and I did a mailbag last week in Madrid, and we answered a question that was kind of similar to this, and it was like, we came to the conclusion that like knowing that Carlo Ancelotti never wins back-to-back league titles and the title defense is always bad with him in the league, you'd still make a trade. Like if you were given the option, hey guys, you're gonna win this many Champions League titles basically once every 2 years, and every second year is going to be terrible. Would you make that trade? I would. I would make the trade. I'm fine with it. You're still winning more than anyone else. Jabron says, ACL, what do you think of the players not doing half squats and super fast leg presses?
Is that still a problem? I thought that was a Gregory Dupont thing from like...
They're still doing those exercises.
The exact same ones.
Yeah.
I mean...
I'm just not qualified enough to make a judgment call on this kind of physical stuff.
I will say there's complaints from the players. They feel like some of the training is wrong, is what the reports have said recently. They feel like we talked about this, Pintus is getting too much credit. Pintus' method is like a little obscene. We do individual work. That's what makes us the best, is what the report said. Maybe it is wrong. I won't comment, only in the sense that these are genetic freaks. I don't know. What's considered common wisdom for ordinary people doesn't always apply to them.
Al-Amin Ahmad says, if Ancelotti stays, I think he should try Camavinga at DM, Fede right CM, Goulet left CM. Goulet as a left CM can solve a lot of the build-up issues. He is press resistant, Ozil type vision, set piece merchant, etc. So Kama, Fede, Goulet midfield. And then I'm assuming Jude spearheads a diamond of sorts.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd line it up exactly that way, but I want to see Jude, Goulet, Fede, Camavinga on the field together. That was the lineup I was asking earlier. Why haven't we seen it?
Goulet, you remember Ancelotti said in the preseason that he wants Goulet on the right because from there he can cut in and shoot?
Yeah.
Turns out Carlo actually prefers Arda Goulet on the bench, so he can't cut in and shoot from anywhere. He just wants to stay on the bench. But Goulet as a left CM would kind of, and I'm just thinking about what the future might look like with him there if he were to play that role. It would be kind of Di Maria-esque. I also think Goulet is a little bit underrated defensively. I think he works hard enough. I think he goes into challenges without fear. I understand he looks very skinny and he's very small, and that is true. But I think on the field he actually has a presence to him, and I think he's actually worked hard defensively from what I've seen. I think he's a little bit underrated on that end of the field.
I don't think he would look like Di Maria, because I don't think he'd ever dribble like that. I think even like Camavinga dribbles, but he doesn't cross, so it doesn't look like Di Maria in that sense. But I think I get where he says the Ozil thing, because Ozil would drop pretty deep into random zones for Germany, especially. I don't know if he did it as much. I know he was like all over the place for Real Madrid too, but for Germany, he would drop near Cruz and they would kind of like play together through the opposition. Euro 2016, for example. So, I mean, that's the vision we had for him in preseason too, that we thought Carlo had. So I hope we see it someday. I'm super curious to see where Goulet ends up though. I am with Carlo in that I think Goulet can kind of see the whole field in front of him, the whole 180 degrees. So I don't know if I'd want him too far to the left either. I kind of want him in the middle where he can see everything.
He's been popping up on the left wing for Turkey during like the international break when I watch Turkey play. It's not that often, but he does show up there and he puts in like good balls into the box. Mr. Sushi says, would you take Gasperini if possible?
Is that realistic firstly, I don't think that's possible for interim. I think he's too good a coach to be like, hey, come for part of the season. He would coach a better press though.
He would be, I mean, looking at the Atalanta blueprint, it's pretty intense pressing and control on the ball. I don't think he has aura to manage this team. That's my analysis. I think he lacks aura to be a Real Madrid manager.
Like, you don't think he's a big enough name? He won't have to pull over the players.
Correct. Yeah.
Little Kike Setién at Barca, like.
Yeah. Kind of good, decent parallel. Yeah. Yalim Yüksel Konus says, I wonder who leaves first, Arda or Carlo?
No, I don't. I don't like the super chat. I
don't like to get into this hypothetical.
It's not.
I don't think there's any scenario where Arda leaves before Carlo.
Yes, exactly. Like I don't wonder, Mr. Yüksel. I do not wonder that.
Jeff Soa says, Zizou would be good for Vinny's temperament, but will they gel? Yeah, I mean, I think Zidane gels with starters.
You think Vinny will be like, I hate you. I did it. I wasn't good under you. I don't like you. Like,
yeah, well, but things are
Vinny will call a meeting. You don't think Vinny will call a meeting the first day and be like, we need to sort this out, or I'm going to pressure Perez to
No, because the reason why they didn't, it wasn't really, the connection between them wasn't great initially, was because Zidane didn't play Vinny. He would not bench Vinny now. There's no way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Vinny started picking up towards the end of Zidane's time.
Are you wearing your seatbelt for this one? Alamin says, what if we hire Ten Hag? Big grin emoji. He is free.
I'd rather get relegated with Carlo than hire Ten Hag and do anything.
Hard pass.
I
Zaffrey's.
wouldn't mind Tuchel, but England got him for what it's worth. Just while we're talking about coaches, would you take Tactics Tommy if you could have? I mean, he's gone.
Okay, so on Tuchel, I'm a huge fan of him. I don't know how it would work at Real Madrid. I really don't.
This is a tough club. I do think as an interim, it might have been the ideal. Like, I think he would have dominated.
Interim would be fine, because if he's like under this situation where he's like, you're not committed to him, but then he might be so good in those few months that, you might end up extending. I don't know. I'm a huge Tuchel fan, but I just don't know how it would work at Real Madrid with a manager like him.
It would be like 2021 Chelsea. He would, just like he took over for Lampard. He'd set up a back three or something. We'd be the deadliest defensive team in the world. Just kidding. But it's a shame he's gone now, so he's not even an option. I always wanted to see him here. You remember I did a pod like years ago asking for him here. Were you on? I don't know if you were on it.
Maybe. I don't think Tuchel is a Real Madrid type manager. I also like, one of my favorite managers right now is Simone Inzaghi. I don't know if he's a Real Madrid type manager either.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. That's the thing. Like, there are only like four of them. There are only four Real Madrid type managers in the world. The same four every time.
Maybe Ancelotti will turn this around. Zaffrey says, Mbappe's made us a super team. Has there been past cases, football or basketball, where a super team failed miserably? How did the team fix their issues? Oh, now you're speaking our language. How much time you got, Zaffrey?
We got to start with I guess like the Miami Heat with LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Bosch. They failed the first year, but that was partly because they had like no role players. That's not the problem here. We're stacked. Like, we're super stacked. We have almost every type of player.
Brooklyn Nets.
You could say, the Nets, like, they just got injured. I think the best comparison is our own super teams of the past, like the Benitez one, where they were a mess for 6 months, and then Zidane comes in and they win the Champions League. And I think it's a case of just needing some fresh energy, or even going from Mourinho 12-13, and then Carlo comes in, kind of heals the dressing room. 13-14 we win. I think a lot of our 2010s teams are the best examples, because we brought in Modric, brought in Cruz, changed coaches, slowed the team down, brought in role players that do a job. I think our own team is the best example. What do you think, Kiyan?
I was on record quite a few times this summer saying that this will not happen with this team, because unlike, for example, the old Galacticos of 20 years ago, that team had no midfield spine. They had sold their only DM for a right winger. You had two right wingers. You had some post-peak superstars. No midfield presence, no defensive presence. And sorry, my son's making me laugh. But then we have Camavinga, Tchouaméni, Fede Valverde, Jude Bellingham, and like, what more could you ask for in terms of like a midfield that works hard on both ends of the field? So I was on record. Am I wrong about that? So far, yes. I guess time will tell long term, but I feel like this is a salvageable situation. I still feel that way. I don't think this team is set up properly from a tactical point of view.
Yeah, I think a coaching change does it for sure. It's as simple as that, Zaffrey.
Jeff Soa says, would you give up Tchouaméni for Pogba? And other than Rodri, who?
That's a funny question.
So far, we've had floater around Gasperini, Ten Hag, Paul Pogba. I can't remember who else.
Well, Rodri, or Pogba. The other one, I would give him up for Declan Rice. Would you do that, Kiyan? Would you take Declan Rice?
I think right now Rice is better.
Yeah, he is. He is, no question. Rice is like as good as any of our deeper midfielders, you could argue, right now. At least compared to Fede Chouameni, very favorable.
Hey, Luca, do you want to coach Real Madrid?
Yeah,
What do you think you would win some trophies?
a lot.
All right, Florentino, I hope you're watching. We got
I
a
would give up.
replacement.
I wouldn't give up Chouameni for Pogba though. I guess we got to answer. Rodri's a good player. Chouameni's young. Rodri's a little older. How old is Rodri right now? Let's see. Rodri age 28. That's what I thought. So Chouameni's a little younger. I guess. Who else would you give him up for? Would you give him up for Joshua Kimmich? I mean, a lot of these guys.
It's not. No, it's not a long list.
Bruno.
It's not.
Bruno G.
It's also
Bruno G. Potentially. Bruno Guimaraes. He is a good player. I think he might be.
I still wouldn't. I understand why this conversation exists because he's been really poor. But apart from Rodri and Rice, and Rodri also has the age factor. He's much older than Chouameni. They have to factor that in. So, it's not a long list though. I don't think. Okay, we got to fly through these. It's we're 1 hour 42 minutes in.
Yeah, I just saw that.
JH Oscar says we need Alonso. If Carlos stays, it'll be 14-15 again.
It is 14.
To his credit, 14-15 wasn't entirely his fault. I mean, we got to the Champions League semifinals. We had that crazy unbeaten run. Real Madrid didn't sign a replacement for Xabi Alonso. Cruz and Modric were running to the ground. Modric had a huge injury. Ramos had to play DM. And we got to the Champions League semifinals, and of course, ironically, knocked out by Alvaro Morata. Classic. Did you know?
Arbeloa were horrible that season. Horrible. And Khedira was horrible.
I mean, Khedira was also injured for a lot of that season. Yalim says, after watching Arda for over 4 years, I believe Carlo is losing Arda. Arda innately is a team player, but every time he subs in 3-4 minutes a game, he gets more and more selfish to show himself. I think Arda has actually been pretty good at doing the right things in those minutes, but it's true. It is hard to prove yourself if you're barely playing, and then when you do play well, you don't really get rewarded for it. Guys, we got to wrap it here. 1 hour 43 minutes in. Sorry that this is yet another therapy session. Would not be surprised, unfortunately, if this was just one of many therapy sessions this year. But it is what it is. Hala Madrid regardless. No question. And we'll be back. I think Lucas and I are going to be back for our members tomorrow. So if you want to hear Lucas's thoughts, and those are always interesting after a game like this.
And Lucas, all his teams are losing too, so it must be really fun to hear Lucas's thoughts right now. His NBA
he beat my Raptors last night. RJ Barrett missed 3 at the buzzer.
Well, now
in and out.
Aaron Gordon's out now for like weeks, so it's a fun time to be Lucas. Now he experiences Westbrook. Lucas has having a tough time, so yeah, go give Lucas a tough time tomorrow.
At least we don't have Russell Westbrook in our team. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
If you want to hear Lucas's thoughts, head on over to patreon.com/Managing Madrid. That's El Dia Después after every Real Madrid game, only for members. If you don't have Patreon in your country and you're watching on YouTube, just hit the memberships tab on the YouTube channel, and we'll see you there. Sid, thank you. Thank you to all of our amazing listeners. Hala Madrid. Thank you to everyone who provided super chats, all 21 of you. You guys are awesome. We really like. I just want to say this too. Like, I have a lot of gratitude for you guys. The fact that we can have this platform and just hop on and talk about the good and the bad, and the highs and the lows. It's thanks to you guys. So thank you so much for being a part of this with us, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks, Sid. Peace out.